the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. Reviews, previews, stories old and new. A podcast about the jewels, just for you. Dedicated to the past, present, and future too. It's the Shouting Men podcast. Go grab a brew. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the Shouting Men podcast with me, Kirrien and David, and we are here to talk about the start of the Sky Bet EFL League 2 season and also a few other surprises on the way. David, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you feeling about the start to the season so far?
Been really impressed. Unfortunately, I've been on a family holiday, so I did miss the first game of the season, which does seem to happen. But whenever I miss the first game of the season, we do normally score a shed load of goals, so that's good. But yeah, I've managed to catch up on the games that I've missed, and yeah, can't really complain. We're doing the first podcast, and we're top of the league.
Yeah, top of the league we are. However, what I will say, and I'll add a quick caveat to that, this time last season we were also top of the league, and look what happened there.
Yeah, this is this season though.
Very, very good point indeed. So, on tonight's podcast, we are going to talk about the games that have happened so far in August, our transfer business, our new gaffer, and talk about Ethan Coleman, as well as look ahead to the games in September. Now, a quick caveat to that, we are recording this 2 days after the Peterborough game, which we will briefly mention, but we will be sort of focusing on that in the podcast at the end of September. So, to the first point, which is August. And as you can see, we've not done too badly on the goal scoring front. This time last season, we scored, 4 goals? And this season, we are on 7 in total, including 1 in the EFL trophy against Swansea, which we lost. But we're not really going to focus too much on that. As Mark Bonner said himself, that was just a extended pre-season game. So, David, what do you think of the results so far?
Yeah, no, I think they've been really good. On paper, these fixtures aren't easy. Have been played 2 relegated teams that were in League One last year, and 1 team that ran away with the National League last year, and throw in the middle of that a trip to Swansea in the Cup. Yeah, can't complain. 7 goals, 7 different goal scorers as well. Yeah, all looking good.
Yeah, let's quickly look at the Gillingham-Carlisle game, the one you missed. 4 goal scorers in a 4-1 win against a team that's tipped to do pretty well, possibly top 7 team just like us. Now, I watched that game, and I didn't think we deserved a 4-1 win.
Yeah, from the highlights that I watched back when I returned from a holiday, I think it slightly flattered us. I think first half, yeah, I think they definitely missed a few more chances. But for once, I would say Gillingham were pretty clinical. Not a word that I thought I would use with the Gills, but it seemed to shoot and it just seemed to go in. And yeah, like you said, Carlisle are a tip to do really well this year. So yeah, can't really complain with the start that we had.
Yeah, and I was absolutely delighted to see Johnny Williams score a goal, something he didn't do last season in the league. And you could see on his face after he scored that goal how relieved he was to get a league goal for Gillingham. And I mean, to open your account in the league with a goal like he scored was absolutely fantastic. It was a screamer, and I was thrilled for him.
Yeah, definitely. Especially last year, he played a lot of his games out of position, out wide left, and I think. Well, obviously, we're going to get onto transfers and people that play in his position a little bit later, but I'm sure he enjoyed a run out in his more favoured position. And yeah, like you said, shame I weren't there in person to see the goal, but yeah, definitely a good goal when I watched it back.
And briefly mentioning the Swansea game, Ollie Hawkins scored for a player that's supposedly transfer listed. And again, Lapsley in the Morecambe game. It's good to see these two players that you could say are out of favour, taking their chances with all the injuries we've had to basically say, well, actually, I deserve to stay at the club.
Definitely. If this is the George Lapsley we're going to get moving forward, then I'm all for that. When we signed him 2 Januaries ago, he was the one out of all of the Gallinson signings that I was the most excited about. And he ended up being the one I was the most disappointed about. Couldn't seem to string games together. And when he did, he was in and out of games. And yeah, but he definitely looks way up for it this year. Looks a lot slimmer and seems to actually be, that sounds harsh, but he seems to actually be trying. Where I said last time, it looked like he was, I think, just too in and out of games. So hopefully moving forward, we get this George Lapsley.
Yeah, I agree. I was absolutely looking forward to seeing what him and Ollie Hawkins could do when they came from Mansfield together. They were like two peas in a pod at Mansfield, but whereas Hawkins sort of came into his own and did what we needed him to do to stay up last season, the season before, he didn't really have as much of an impact last season. But then, to be fair, no one did, because we finished second lowest scorers in the league apart from Forest Green and got relegated. So the whole team sort of failed on the goal scoring front last season. But what do you think of Hawkins taking his chance against Swansea? Do you think he's a player that can still do a job for us, or do you think he should be going in January?
I would keep him for this season. I think he will be one on the list at the end of the season that I wouldn't be surprised come then that we let him go. Purely because the options we've now got up front. I know that Jacob Wakelin isn't our player, but when you look at Andrews, Nevitt, players that I'm now forgetting, we just got plenty of options at the top end of the pitch, and the fact that he can play centre half probably could have done with him being fit this weekend. But that's for next month.
Yeah, and just as you mentioned it, what do you think about Wakelin in his first few games for us?
Again, unfortunately, I didn't get to see him in person, but I think he took his finish well. He looks to me more of a player that I think probably needs a Ollie Hawkins or a Josh Andrews to play alongside. Looks a little bit lightweight to play up there on his own. But yeah, to have him on loan, more than happy.
It's sort of like the Tom Nichols, Ollie Hawkins conundrum, isn't it? Little and large up front. It worked well for us when we needed it to. Last season, it didn't work as well. But again, it sort of felt like last season that a lot of our players weren't being played to their strengths.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the season pans out with how we go up the top end of the pitch, because basing it on the 5 games we've had in August, it looks like it's a one up top with 2 wide players. And yeah, is Wakelin that man that would lead the line on his own? I'm not sure. I think he'd be slightly down the pecking order. But if there's a game where we're behind or we're level with 10, 15 minutes to go and you need to chuck a man up front with another striker, I think he's a really good option.
Yeah, definitely. And just whilst we're mentioning managers that didn't play players to their strengths, Barrow are currently third. Stephen Clements is their manager. Do you think that is possibly because he's had a full transfer window to build his squad around him? And do you think maybe if he was given the opportunity to continue here, do you think we would be just as, I'm going to use the word successful because I can't think of the right word, but successful in the league right now as we are, or as both clubs are at the moment?
I just think the whole Clements thing. I do think he will be a good manager, and he's probably proving that with how he started at Barrow. I just think him and Gillingham, I just think it was the wrong fit, probably the wrong place, wrong time. I'm glad to see him doing well at Barrow because, yeah, he seemed like a nice enough guy, but I just think he had long enough with us, and there just wasn't enough change. I think it was brutal by the club, the way it all happened. But the way we've started under Mark Bonner, it looks like the right decision for us, and I'm sure Barrow is saying the same thing for them. They're more than happy with who they've got right now.
Yeah, when Pete Wild left Barrow, I was shocked, and I was even more shocked that Stephen Clements replaced Pete Wild because, well, Pete Wild's Pete Wild. But yeah, I'm glad to see hit the ground running at Barrow, and they're only 1 point behind us. And I think Barrow are going to be probably just outside the playoffs at the end of the season. But if you look at most of the so-called EFL experts, they put Barrow quite firmly in sort of mid to bottom half of the table. So, but I've seen highlights of some of their games, and they've played well. It's not like they've played badly; they've played really well, and I'm quite glad that that Conor Mahoney went to Barrow and stayed with Stephen Clements, and he's actually showing what he's worth full time. The only thing I would say is, though, I wouldn't swap Jack Nolan for Mahoney. Mahoney? Yeah, Mahoney. I wouldn't swap Jack Nolan at all.
No, completely agree. And back on the point of Clements, I think fair play to him as well, because he could easily have just gone into hiding because after the way he left Gillingham, but he's jumped straight back in. A bit of a move for him, bit of distance between Gillingham and Barrow, but no, fair play to him. And yeah, like you said, from what I've seen of Jack Nolan, he's a wide player that likes to stay out wide, take players on. Where Mahoney, I quite liked Mahoney, but he was I don't want to say he was slightly one-dimensional in the fact that you kind of knew what he was going to do a lot. He was always going to come in. He was always going to try and shoot. Where with Nolan, it looks like he's more than happy to go on the outside. And yeah, the way he started with Hutton as well, it looks promising going forward.
Yeah, and on to, I know we briefly mentioned Lapsley's goal at Morecambe, but on to the Morecambe and Fleetwood games, two very difficult away games. A long ways to travel to both, I think. I'm not sure if it was Morecambe or Fleetwood, but Mark Bonner was saying in an interview that it took 8 hours to get to the ground. I mean, that is incredible and tiring. I mean, I live not too far from Morecambe. I live about 2 hours from Morecambe. And the irony is I can actually get down to Gillingham in about 3-4 hours by train. But that's an incredible amount of stamina to go from Gillingham to Swansea to Gillingham to Morecambe to Gillingham to Fleetwood, all in the space of 14 days.
Agreed. Yeah, because if we were a Premier League side, we'd be jetting to Swansea, jetting to Morecambe, and jetting to Fleetwood. But unfortunately, we don't have that. And I'm sure the coach they travel on is of decent quality. but I'm sure it's still. I'm sure they'd still rather not be sitting on it for 8 hours.
Yeah, almost certainly. I mean, I travel all over the country by coach because it's cheap and convenient, but like doing a 4-hour journey down to London is quite difficult for me. So, so I couldn't imagine 8 hours. But 4 points out of a possible 6 over those 2 games. Very decent take back to ME7 there. 2 scrappy games, and what they say that teams that go up are the teams that can win even when they're playing badly. Last season we couldn't win even when we were playing pretty well. So definitely a turnaround from last season, don't you think?
No, definitely. I say defensively, it's never really been a problem. We're not. I don't want to jinx us. We're not normally a team that concede lots and lots of goals. Obviously, scoring goals has been the problem. But again, I did sit back, and even though I already knew the scores of those games, I did sit and still watch them back after the game, even though I'd read how bad they were. But yeah, like you said, 2 big away games against 2 decent sides. Morecambe surprised me considering all the turbulence they had over the summer with releasing literally their whole squad, then signing loads back. I know they've started poorly. I think they've lost every game, but it's a tough place to go, and to nick that one, to then give you that go at Fleetwood and again take a good point there. I cannot complain with the first 2 away games.
And I'd just quickly like to point out that 2 of the teams that we've played so far this season are on my league table right there in Fleetwood and Chesterfield. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, that this season, we think of this season being an easier season because of the likes of Mansfield and Stockport and Wrexham not being in the league. But actually, this season isn't going to be easy at all. You've got Notts County who are still going, Doncaster Rovers, who we've got on Saturday, who are breathing down our necks, 1 point behind us. I know it's far too early in the season to say how it's going to go, but you can't really take those 3 teams being out of the league as making this an easier season for us, can you?
No. I think it will be slightly easier. Like you said, the teams that did go up, but this division it's getting harder and harder because the teams that come into the division, like your Chesterfields, they've even got money. They've got momentum and money. And again, Bromley might not have the money, but the momentum they bring up, and there's so many big sides now in this division, it's just so open. So to play 4 games so far, have 10 points, cannot complain at all. Would snap your hand off. I know we had 12 last season, but to have 10 at this point, I'd snap your hands off.
Yeah, I would indeed. And finally, just on the Chesterfield game, 2 red cards, 1 for each side. Max will be suspended for the next game against Doncaster Rovers. Max Amer. Do you think we're going to suffer there? Bearing in mind Conor Masterson probably won't be fit for that game. Where do you see the extra centre back coming from? For me personally, I think it's going to be possibly OG and Mackenzie in the back 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Mackenzie dropped back in, did perfectly fine against Chesterfield, and I just think if it was any other game, he may have risked Giles, but I just think with it being Doncaster, and especially an away fixture, I think you just need that experience, and it may have been a bit of the reason why Ethan Coleman only played 45 minutes the other day in the Peterborough game. I would expect him to probably come into the midfield and Mackenzie to play alongside Ogie.
Yeah, I can see that happening as well. Now we're going to talk about transfer business, and it's been a busy transfer window. I don't think we can start anywhere but talking about the return of the Dak, Mr. Bradley Dak being back at ME7. Your thoughts, David?
Yeah, it was one of those that was being linked on social media, and it's just one of those ones where you start getting your hopes up at the fact that he could come back. And yeah, when they did release that video, it was so good. And even now, when you see videos or pictures on Twitter or on Facebook of the team in training, and you just see Dak in a Gillingham training top, just can't get your head around it. But that he's back. I'm not expecting him to be the player he was when he was here, or the player he even was at Blackburn. But if he's half that player, it's worth the risk. And he will, if he's half that player, we will get promoted for sure if he is half fit and we can get enough games out of him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember watching Bradley when I was like 13, 14 years old. No,
now I feel old.
Ago, wasn't it? No, I was in my early 20s, not in my early teens. But I remember watching Bradley Dak playing, and Dak was always my favourite player when I was in my early 20s. Sorry, mid 20s. Now I think about it, but hey ho, what's a few years in it? And when he left for Blackburn for what was it, £750,000 back then, I always expected to see him maybe in the Premier League, not at your Chelsea's, United, your Arsenal's, but at your sort of like back then your Watfords, West Broms, West Hams, stuff like that. Maybe getting the odd England cap. Two ACL injuries. Was it ACLs he did? Yeah, two ACL injuries over 2.5 years as sort of put pace to that. I remember when this was coming out, all the Sunderland fans going, "Oh, he's rubbish. He's never going to do anything." All the Blackburn fans were like, "We're looking out for you, Bradley. Good luck." All the Jules fans were hysterical. Yeah, to have him come back for me is fantastic. Back home, the king, the prodigal son, whatever you want to call him. To see him back in the blue of Gillingham, and we saw him for his first outing against Peterborough 2 days ago. But again, we'll talk about that later on in the month. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him more and more. And I've said this, I've been criticised for saying it. A half-fit Bradley Dak is still the best player in League Two.
I agree. I said it still amazes me that we've got him. We're lucky to have him, and just fingers crossed we can get enough minutes out of him. Because as I said, if he's fit for the majority of the games, we will get out of this division.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we could talk about Bradley Dak all night, but unfortunately, we don't have all night. So let's move on to the rest of the business. Armani Little, we signed from Wimbledon. Elliot Nevitt from Crewe. Aaron Rowe, I think, was at Crewe as well on loan, wasn't he? But contracted to Huddersfield. Ewan Williams from Charlton Athletic. Luca Ashby-Hammond came in on deadline day because of a long-term injury to Jake Turner. Jacob Wakelin on loan from Peterborough. Jack Nolan from Accrington. And Marcus Wiley from 4 or 5 divisions below us, Enfield Town. What I will say about Marcus Wiley, watching him play, I've seen highlights of most of his goals from last season. And by God, if he can replicate that in League Two this season, even half as many, he is going to be some player.
I agree. Yeah, I was really impressed with his effort. I think he only had the one shot, but the runs he was making, just the effort he put in. I know that players should put an effort in, but like you said, he's come up 4 or 5 divisions. I think he played against Chatham Town in the playoff game to get Enfield promoted against Chatham. That just shows the level he was playing at. And then, to make your debut against Chesterfield, who are no mugs. was really impressed with Chesterfield. I just thought, the way he ran the channels, hold up play can probably improve, but I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure he was nervous. He looked sharp. I wouldn't say rapid, but he looked sharp. And even his shot was a shot probably last season our strikers probably wouldn't have took on. I've always been pretty critical with some of our strikers with the fact that it's almost they're too scared to shoot at times. They didn't want the groans of the Raynham ends. They'd rather pass to someone, but he wasn't scared to have a shot. And I'm excited to see what happens with him over the season. I don't want him to be the type that isn't in the squad and he's only going to play the EFL trophy games. I think we need him in and around the squad, whether Nevitt's going to be the main man up front or Andrews or whatever. I think they need to give this guy a run out and see what he can do. Because I was really, really impressed. What about you, mate? What was out of that list? Who's impressed you so far?
Well, bearing in mind half of that list has been injured or suspended, there's not really a lot to go on. But for me, I've liked the look of Armani Little. He's looked fast. He's looked strong. He's got the ability to hold up the ball, but he's also got the ability to put the balls into the channel. And Armani Little's just looked brilliant for me. What little we've seen of Nolan, that goal he scored against Carlisle, he made out of nothing. He had a pretty poor game before, up until that point, and banged it in from just outside the area, out of nowhere. Almost did a carbon copy of that against Peterborough the other day, but it got saved. I'm looking forward to see what Nevitt brings to the table. He scored against Peterborough, didn't he?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, he scored against Peterborough, but again, not talking about that game tonight. Aaron Rowe has looked good from what we've seen of him. Ewan Williams, I'm a bit disappointed that he got himself sent off against Swansea. It was a challenge.
It was reckless, wasn't it?
Yeah, though last time I checked, you didn't get rewarded for getting a red card, and he got called up the next day to the Northern Ireland 21 squad. So Bradley, Armani, Elliott, the rest of you get red cards, you get called up to your national teams. No, don't get red cards. That's ridiculous. Jacob Wakeling's looked okay. One thing I will say about Jacob Wakeling is I think he played for Swindon 2 years ago and was insanely good for them. And when it comes to attacking talent, Peterborough are no mugs. So there is something. There's obviously something about him that Peterborough see, which we haven't seen yet, but it is early in the season. So I am looking forward to seeing what he can do. Though if Nevitt stays fit, I can't see Wakeling or Wiley getting much game time.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I would think, especially based on his goal scoring record last season, he's scored in the game that we're not really going to talk about. And I think Mark Bonner's got a huge decision to make this weekend regarding the Doncaster game with who he does go with, because I think it would be harsh on Wiley not to start. But now Andrews has played 60, 70 minutes over his two appearances. Nevitt's got 45 minutes and a goal. Yeah. It'd be interesting. It's good for Bonner that he's got to make these decisions. He's got these options, but it will be interesting to see that lineup come 2:00 on Saturday.
And I would just like to point out, as you mentioned, Nevitt's goal scoring record last season. I think Nevitt and Nolan between them scored half of our total goal stats last season.
Well, there you go. Let's hope they can replicate it again this season.
Let's hope so indeed. And we've mentioned the new gaffer. We have a new gaffer, Mark Bonner. He's been out the game for 18 months or so, I think. Just under a year. Obviously, a legend in Cambridge. Didn't have a playing career, but he's worked his way up through the football coaching world from a young age. He's 38 now, so he's not exactly old. He's still one of the youngest coaches in League Two, and for having managed 201 games for Cambridge United, having a 38.31% win percentage is not bad at all. What do you think?
I agree, especially that you got to look at the last season he was there. They were a struggling side, so probably the majority of those defeats probably came in his last season there. But yeah, obviously we know that he got Cambridge out of the division. Obviously he did have Paul Mullin to help that along the way. So let's hope that obviously one of Elliot Nevitt can be our Paul Mullin this season and get us out of this division. But I don't think you can look at those stats and complain. That percent rate now, if you look in Championship, Premier League, there'll be managers with that percentage that keep getting jobs. And yeah, I'm more than happy with the appointment. And obviously it's a very good start that he's had so far. What were your thoughts after the appointment? Was he a name that you were thinking could be the next Gills manager, or were you like probably, I would say the majority of Gills fans, like taken by shock when his name came out of nowhere?
He was on my list, but he wasn't very high on my list. He was definitely someone I thought could do a job at Gills, and obviously he's got promotion from this league. I think Cambridge finished third under him. He was definitely on my list, but I didn't think we would go for him. I thought we'd go for someone like a Gareth Ainsworth or someone like that. But I'm not disappointed is all I'm going to say right now.
Yeah, I think he speaks well as well.
Yeah, he speaks very well. He's very clear. He makes sure that you don't get your hopes up. But at the same time, he praises what needs to be praised. And he also criticises what needs to be criticised. And I think that was something we were lacking last season, because all Neil Harris would ever say is, yeah, we've done all right. And Steve Clements wouldn't say very much. One thing I do like about Mark Bonner is watching him on the touchline. He's watching the game. He's sort of a master of the tactics of football and of the art of football. And he'll watch the game in fine detail. And you can see if he's not communicating with his players on the pitch, he's writing notes. And he's studying the game in front of him. And I think that's a good attribute for a manager. So you always know the next step. And from what we've seen in the game so far, whenever there has been an issue, he's had something to counter that issue. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I think he's been even when it comes down to substitutions. I think we've probably, like most clubs, you do become predictable. You think, 60 minutes, better make some substitutions. He seems a little bit different from that. He's happy to make subs at half time. He's happy to make subs in the 50th minute, and he's happy to if he doesn't want to make subs, he's happy to wait till the 80th minute. And I quite like that. I don't like you to just become, well, we've got to make a sub. You want to make the subs when you feel like the team needs that impact. And yeah, like you said, even writing notes down, and he obviously has got a huge amount of trust in his coaching staff. He lets them give out orders. I just, like I said, I've been very, very impressed. I didn't know too much about him other than obviously the promotion year at Cambridge, because it was a big thing, them getting promoted. I didn't really take much of a look in them after the promotion. But I'm more than happy. And I even listened to pretty much most of his pre and post match interviews. And I wouldn't say I've done that for a very, very long time. I just, like you said, he gives us what we want. I think as Gills fans, you just want a bit of honesty. And yeah, if we're playing badly, he'll say we're playing badly. If we're playing well, he'll say we're playing well. If he thinks we've nicked a game and he doesn't care and we've played badly, hear say that. And I think he seems to have got the Gills fans on side, which probably Clements didn't do. And yeah, long may it continue.
I would even say that Harris didn't have the respect of the fans. He did have respect for the fans initially, but I think even Harris didn't have the respect that Bonner's got straight away.
Yeah, I think Harris started to, apart from the fist pumps, which you can kind of give or take on them. But I say I do like Brad the Kit Man doing it. I think that's quite good. But yeah, I think Harris. I don't know. I just don't know what I think we hear rumours of the whole Harris thing, but I just think the last thing, he just didn't seem himself. He was another one again when he first joined, that when he was doing his press conferences, you listened and he seemed very enthusiastic, but by the end it just looked like he just seemed drained, and that it just lost his enthusiasm. And it was probably, the timing was a bit of a shock, but I think looking back, it was probably the right decision. I just think they then made the wrong decision after.
Yeah, definitely. I was always of the opinion that it was too early for Harris to go. I think Harris should have been given till Christmas to get things sorted out, and then sort of given the heave-ho once the new transfer window had come in, so the new manager could get in if need be. But anyway, we're talking about Mark Bonner. But yeah, I've not seen anything I don't like about Mark Bonner at the minute, and long may it continue.
Agree. And even with the other Gillingham podcasts, he's been on those. It's just little things that engage with the fans, almost be like a man of the people, as they say. Just engaging. Whenever you see him walk down the touchline, he's engaging, and he seems like a guy, that you'd want to play for. And I think from the start of the season, it looks like the players are definitely playing for him.
Yeah, definitely. And now we're talking about players. We're now going to talk about a player that's only played one game so far this season, Ethan Coleman.
Yes, he's one that, obviously, as I stated earlier in the podcast, that I think he'll play this weekend. But I wanted to run something by you on the way that we've started this season and the way that Ethan Coleman plays based on his performances last season. To me, he's a very good player, and he's one of the players probably of value within the squad that I'm sure we could make some money on. But for me, he's a little bit backwards, sideways. And looking how we've started the season with Little, McKenzie, Dieng's been a little bit in and out, but we just look a lot more proactive in the middle of the park with those 2 or 3 combinations there. But whether you think he should walk straight back into the team, or whether you think he should start on the bench, what do you think would have happened if Max hadn't got sent off and Max was available? Do you think Ethan Coleman would walk straight back into this team, or do you think he's going to have to bide his time?
If it wasn't for the fact that we are very light in defence right now because of injuries and suspensions, I would put Coleman on the bench. But fortunately for Ethan Coleman, we are very light defensively right now, and we know that Coleman is brilliant at being back up to that back 4. He's very, very good defensively. I would just like to point out though that the whole team last season was very backwards, sideways. So I don't know. I think this season we're going to see how Ethan Coleman really plays when he plays, and to see if he can play this forward-thinking, attacking style that Mark Bonner seems to be wanting to bring in. And if he can't, I think he'll be gone at the end of the season. Although, actually, no, saying that, no, he won't be, because he signed a new contract today, didn't he?
He did.
So, no, he won't be going anywhere at the end of the season. I'm actually quite glad he signed a new contract, because even if he's not starting, he's definitely someone who gives us good options from the bench. And I quite like having good squad depth on the bench. And we have that this season when we don't have a long shopping list of injuries. But quite honestly, I like what he can do defensively. I just hope he's got a little bit more going forward that we didn't really see last season. But I think we will, if he's got that in his basket, we'll see it this season.
Yeah, and when you look at the way I said at the start, it looks like Bonner plays a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. So there's normally an attacking midfield player in there. You've got to think that it's almost Little plus one, isn't it? Of your McKenzie, Coleman, Dieng. Be finding that combination, because obviously once Dak's fit, it's going to be Dak, Little plus one. And yeah, so I've got nothing against Coleman, and it could be that the way that we now play now, because I haven't noticed a huge change from how we played. The one thing I have noticed is we do seem to be passing the ball a tad quicker. That was one of my gripes last year, where it was just so slow. That this year it does seem to be a tad quicker, and that's where I think he may need to adapt his game. And like you said, we've only seen 45 minutes of him this season, so he could be a completely different player this season. So fingers crossed, if he does start the weekend, which I think he will, that he has a good game, and he gives Mark Bonner another tough decision, because again, Max or Connor are back. They're going to come back in, and then he's got a huge decision to make about Robbie McKenzie, who again has had a fantastic start to the season.
Yeah, definitely, and I can't wait to see what he does this season. Now we're going to go on to fixtures in September. Now, we've already had the Peterborough game. We've mentioned it a few times. We lost 2-1. Did we lose 2-1?
We did, yes.
We did lose 2-1. Yeah, Nevitt scored, didn't he? I watched that game and I still can't remember the score. What I do remember, though, is we looked very, very good in that game despite losing. And I think Bode's found his position, which is right wing rather than striker, because he was brilliant cutting inside from the right. What are the other games we've got in September?
So we've got 4 games in September, 2 home, 2 away. Doncaster away, Tranmere at home, Notts County away, and then Stephen Clements's Barrow come to the Priestfield at the end of the month. And in between, Crystal Palace's under-21s in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, Papa John's, LDV Vans Cup.
Yeah, I can't think of any more sponsors than that. Johnston Paint Trophy, wasn't it, at one point as well?
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the AFC Barrow game. What are your score predictions for those games? Oh, sorry, no, not score predictions, because that's stupid. Win-loss draw prediction.
Again, whoever does this, whoever pressed the button on the fixtures, hasn't done us any favours again, because you look at those, bar the Tranmere game, but even look at Tranmere sitting 8th at the moment. These are tough. I would honestly, I'm always one of those, if you can try and draw your away games, win your home games, I would take that. I would expect this game, the Doncaster game's the one, purely because of suspensions and injuries, that is going to be the toughest one, in my opinion, on paper. So if we got 7 points out of a possible 12, I would probably be happy. But I would, again, 8 would be good. And the last thing I would want to do is, I'm one of those, I would much rather win your home games than win your away games. I wouldn't want us to lose to Tranmere, because I feel like you've lost 3 points. You should be beating Tranmere at home, would be even better. But Yeah, if I was to be a betting person, I would say I would take 7 points from 12. What about you?
Yeah, I'm similar. 7 points from 12 is what I was sort of looking at. All I will say is, do we have Tranmere at home or away?
We got Tranmere at home.
Thank God for that, because I was at Tranmere away last season when we lost 3-1, and that was absolutely awful. And I don't wish that on anyone ever again. But we are playing in our next 4 games. All of those teams are in the top 8 at the moment. So it just goes to show that these teams are not to be sort of sniffed at. My head is saying that we'll lose on Saturday 1-0.
Yeah, as I say, that's the one that I'm concerned about.
And we'll find out on Saturday, because I'm on the German Jill show on Saturday. So yay, go me! First game of the season. Well, I'm happy to be back on the German Jill show, but I'm even happier that we've got our podcast going. Yeah, I'll be happy with 7 points from 12. I'll be ecstatic with 12 from 12, but we're not going to get 12 from 12. I think we'll.
And another thing you've got to think about is those 4 teams aren't going to want to play us. So that's the thing that we've got. We're not conceding goals. We've scored goals. We're top.
Oh, I've lost David. That's slightly embarrassing. Sorry about that. Technical issues and all that. Let's try and get David back. No, we've lost David. Well, I'll carry on. So yeah, I'm quite happy with. Oh, we've got David back. David's back, everyone. Carry on, David.
Where did you lose me?
To be fair, I was losing you quite a bit through that, but they don't want to play us.
Those 4 teams are going to look at that league table, see us sitting at the top, and they're not going to be wanting to play us, even though, like you said, we're playing 4 teams that are all in the top 8. They're going to be as worried about playing us as we will them. So again, you never know. You never know. We could go and win all 4, but as you said, if you offered me 7 now, I'd take it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, we're coming to the end of the show now, but I just want to quickly talk about some of the things we've got planned over the coming months. So we are currently in the process of getting some fans from Herne Bay, Chelmsford City, and Sutton United, because we're going to do a show maybe every 3 or 4 months throughout the season called Loan Watch, where we specifically look at Gillingham players who are currently on loan. So obviously we've got Ashley Nelson at Sutton United. We've got Tate Holtham at Herne Bay, and who's at Chelmsford City? Alex Gale. Yeah, Alex Gale's at Chelmsford City. Now, Alex Gale is a player I expect to be very much a Gills player in the not too distant future. He looks good in pre-season, and he looks like he's ready for it. But I think going out to Chelmsford for him is a good thing. So we've got that coming up. We're going to do a 25th anniversary special on the Man City playoff final. We've got a very, very special guest for that. We're just finalising the details of that. And we also have Mr. EFL himself, Gabe Sutton, coming on the show in a few months' time. Not to talk about the EFL, but to talk about him, how he got into doing what he does, and some of his favourite football matches and stadiums over the years. What have I missed, David?
That we're going to be trying to do something different. So again, we will be looking for listeners to put their names forward if they want to come on and take a look back at their time supporting Gillingham, reminisce a little bit. Supporting Gills isn't all about the now. It is about the things that we've seen. So whether you're man, woman, boy, girl, old, young, please, contact myself or Kirrien if you want to come on, and we can look back at your favourite games, your favourite players, the worst ground you've been to, the best ground you've been to, nightmare journeys, your dream Fab Four players that have ever played for the club, and we can just talk about the good old days as well as the team that currently sit top of Sky Bet League 2.
Well, that is it for today's podcast. Thank you all for listening and joining. You'll find mine, David's, and the podcast's X channel links in the description below. And I'd just like to say a very big thank you to Acoustic on X for writing our opening theme. Again, you can find his X link in the description below. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.
It's the Shouting Men podcast. 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 Reviews, previews, stories old and new. A podcast about the jewels, just for you. Dedicated to the past, present, and future too. It's the Shouting Men podcast. Go grab a brew. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast. It's the Shouting Men podcast.